I've had to put down a dog before, and that was heartbreaking. But that was after 14 years, and you can sort of eventually find peace in the fact that it was their time and they had a life. But with Loki, I mean, it was more than heartbreaking. It was just devastating because they hadn't had a life.
Sarah Peterson's boxer puppy Loki never got to go on his first walk before his life came to an abrupt end. But to understand this convoluted story of sick puppies, angry owners, sales agents and a prolific dog breeder, we need to go back to the beginning. Sarah Peterson first spotted Loki on Trade Me for $2,250. On July 15, she sent the seller, Hastings-based James Roberts, a number of questions about the puppy.
What food is he being fed? How long have you been a breeder? Have you had any issues with previous litters or the parents? And lastly, do you have any questions for me?
He said he had been feeding Loki large breed puppy food, that Loki had been socialised with friends, teenagers, children and other pets. He did not say how long he had been a breeder. Mr. Roberts also neglected to answer a question on the health of Loki's parents.
On July 18, James Roberts dropped Loki, along with a number of other puppies in the litter, to Auckland in his silver BMW station wagon. That's where Sarah Peterson says she asked more questions about Loki's condition.
As we were holding him, then we could see the scabs on his head, and I could see the scabs on the heads of the other puppies too. And so we asked James, what those were and whether or not, they'd been treated. And so he was saying that they were nothing, they were just from fighting, nothing, no worries there.
She then pressed on the health of Loki's parents again.
We hadn't actually got a clear answer on, more information about the parents. And he again just shrugged and just said he didn't really know. He was just the person driving them up from Hastings, and he wasn't the breeder. And that was kind of the first we'd heard that he wasn't the breeder, because we'd have been dealing with him before, and from the Trade Me aid, it was his account.
But it was only when Sarah Peterson took Loki home that she noticed issues with the puppy's legs.
Once we took him back inside, then you could see that when he was trying to get up, when he was sitting down or when he was lying down, if he tries to get up, he had to kind of put in a little bit of extra effort because his hind legs weren't very strong. So that was another thing that we sort of noted to mention to the vet, because we were already planning to take him to the vet first thing.
So, on July 20, 2 days after James Roberts dropped Loki off, Sarah Peterson took the wee boxer pup to her vet. Vet notes from that visit, provided to Checkpoint, show the pup was underweight with a pot belly and had a mite and parasite infestation.
And then she told us that he was riddled with parasites. Like, those were her words. She said, completely riddled.
After that first visit to the vet, Peterson says she noticed Loki's stability issues getting worse.
1 week after that first vet visit, when it really started to accelerate, he started to see that it was getting a lot worse. He started falling over a lot and just been unable to get back up. And also he'd start expressing kind of pain if he ended up falling over onto his left side, or if he ended up rolling onto his left side. He'd be in quite a lot of pain. We could also see him struggling when he was trying to go to the bathroom, because he was so unbalanced, because his left leg was a little bit worse than his right. So he was unbalanced and couldn't maintain his balance. So that was quite sort of painful to watch, and it was quite kind of painful for him as well.
So on July 28, it was back to the vet for a second time. The vet noted pain in Loki's hips and restricted movement. If you're watching, this video shows the young pup's hind leg appears to be lame and not flexing properly. Loki could be heard yelping when that leg was handled. His left hock, that's the ankle joint, could not be fully flexed, while his knee could not be flexed at all. The vets observed Loki growling and appear in pain when his right leg was manipulated, though it was noted this leg had more movement than the left. The vet suspected a congenital issue or polyarthritis, and Loki was booked in for an X-ray under general anaesthetic on July 30.
And then the vet who was actually doing the X-rays, one of the more experienced surgeons at the clinic, he called me about 2 o'clock that afternoon, and he's got some really bad news, basically, and that there isn't a recovery path for Loki. He said he'd looked at the x-rays and the blood tests, and there was just no realistic chance of recovery.
Vet's notes show Loki was suffering from suspected congenital quadriceps contraction, and his left hind leg could not be flexed at all. The right leg also appeared to have worsened. The vet also noted Loki was suffering from dermatocosis, which causes mange in dogs. The vet advised Sarah Peterson to consider euthanising Loki, which she went through with. She says she was in disbelief. She says she was preparing to have to pay for expensive treatment, not a death sentence.
He told me that if it was his own puppy, then he would put him down. And I just couldn't believe that it was kind of all over for Loki. Like, he was only 10 weeks old. He only just started to sort of come out of his shell and start to see a bit of his personality. And he had so many things that he still had to experience. He had so many, puppy things to still do. He hadn't even been on his first walk.
Sarah contacted James Roberts about Loki's health issues and untimely demise on August 3. After no response, she emailed again a week later on August 10. Mr. Roberts responded the same day, advising her to follow up with the breeder. He told Sarah the breeder's name was Margaret. Her full name is Margaret Harkimer. Ms. Harkimer left the following voice message for Sarah on August 12.
Hi, Sarah. If you're able to get back to me on this number regarding the boxer puppies, we've had a chance to talk to our veterinarians, and we'll take the next step forward. So I just wanted to have just a quick chat with you to let you know what's gone on. We're just going to give you your money back. But I did want to have a chat with you anyways, okay? Bye.
Miss Harkimer, through her company, Windfield Farms Limited, refunded Peterson $2,250 on August 13. But Sarah Peterson wasn't the only recipient of a boxer pup with health issues from that litter of 9. Justine Van Zyl paid $2,250 for her pup, Cooper, which she picked up off James Roberts from an Auckland petrol station on July 18.
So we got him on the 18th. On the 20th, my husband noticed that the scab was getting worse on his forehead and spreading. On the 22nd, I took my pup to the vet to get checked, and they had said that he had puppy pyoderma and cellulitis in his ear, hit both his ears. He was whimpering from the day we got him, and I didn't know why. So when I took him to the vet, she had said because he was in such severe pain because of his ears, and he was always scratching at them.
Notes from Justine's own vet on July 22 show Cooper had inflamed ears with scabs from the trauma of scratching, as well as multiple raised nodules over the top of his head and under his chin. By July 28, the date of the second vet visit, Cooper was noted as constantly scratching his ears. The pinna of his ears was still very inflamed, with raised nodules that were ulcerated in places. Justine Van Zyl was given a raft of medications for Cooper. By the next visit, on August 4, Justine Van Zyl's vet observed Cooper's skin was a lot better, and had continued to improve since.
So we had to end up paying out over $800 already at the vet after we'd paid $2,250 to James for the dog.
Justine Van Zyl says she wants the money she paid for the pup and subsequent vet bills back, while James has offered to reimburse her first round of vet bills. Justine Van Zyl says she found the offer unsatisfactory and has pressed on with a disputes tribunal claim.
Checkpoint had a number of questions about this litter. We wanted to know where they had come from, where were they raised, and what conditions were they brought up in. Our investigation led us here to Hastings in the Hawke's Bay, and our first visit was to the people who sold the puppies. These are the people our complainants initially believed were the breeders.
James Roberts and his partner Rachel Keith agreed to let our camera onto their Hastings property to see where the puppies lived before they were taken north to Auckland. We were allowed to film, but at the time they refused to be recorded. Now, as we've established, the couple aren't the breeders, they are intermediaries, responsible for caring for the puppies from a certain age and selling them on Margaret Harkimer's behalf. Rachel Keith is studying to be a vet nurse and came across Miss Harkimer through a mutual contact. She says her and James Roberts have sold multiple litters of puppies on Miss Harkimer's behalf since March.
Yep, so there was cavoodles, there was a labradoodle, which is obviously Labrador crossed with a poodle, there was Pomeranians, and there was this lot, so 4.
Rachel Keith says the puppies are dropped off at her property by Miss Harkimer when they are around 6 weeks old. She's told us she's never visited Miss Harkimer's property herself to see the puppies she sells on her behalf.
Because I didn't want to. I had my own stuff going on. We were busy with the puppies. I have a family to raise. I had my study. It wasn't an issue.
Margaret Harkimer says other intermediaries have visited her property and she does not discourage them from doing so. As for the property they're kept in at Miss Keith's, it has ample space and dogs of her own for socialisation.
When we first get them, they stay inside in our laundry area, and we have a back door which we fence off, and so they get like an indoor-outdoor flow, and we keep them in there for at least a week and a half till we're sort of happy that they're settled in. And then we move them out into our garage, which is lined, and we put down rubber mats so they're not directly on the concrete. Then they have a duvet cover which gets changed daily for them to sleep on, and also more so over the winter months, there's a heater that's in there to keep the temperature warm. And they also, during the day, especially if it's a nice day like today, we fence them outside on our lawn and they have some sun time.
Rachel Keith is adamant she did not notice any health issues with the boxer litter.
The boxers, we did notice a few worms, but they were worms. And it wasn't until after the puppies had gone that we noticed the runt was... had, lumps on her head, which is when I took her to the vet because I wasn't sure what they were.
And what did the vet say they were?
So the vet said that because she was the runt, that the other puppies were probably picking on her and they were play fighting. And so because it's survival of the fittest and she was little, they picked on her. So he picked the scab off and he said that no, it was lovely and pink underneath and it was nothing to worry about.
Miss Keith says another one of the boxers in the litter, Ruby the runt, which is still in her possession, did have an issue with her hind legs. This was picked up in notes produced by Clive Cottage Vet Clinic when a vet examined all 9 puppies in the litter on July 7.
She was tight in her hind area, and what we needed to do was just grab her back legs and her front legs and gently stretch her out and put her back together. And we just needed to do that a couple of times a day, and then after that she came right.
Rachel Keith says she was told Ruby's leg issue was likely because she was the runt and was being picked on. She says physiotherapy worked on Ruby and struggled to understand why Loki had not received the same treatment. She says the puppies were simply not in the conditions claimed by the new owners, and there was no sign of leg or skin issues. Miss Keith also points out neither her nor James were ever contacted as Loki's condition worsened.
3rd of August was the first that we ever knew about it, plus she also got her money back and never gave us the chance to actually try and see if we could help that puppy at all. So I just kind of think that the victim in all this is the puppy that got put down.
While we were in Hastings, we also wanted to interview Margaret Harkimer herself. However, she repeatedly refused to be interviewed on camera or over the phone. Instead, her lawyer, Wellington-based barrister Stephen Price, answered many questions on her behalf as this story developed. Price, who also acts for Rachel Keith and James Roberts, said his clients didn't have any reasons to suspect any health issues with any of the pups. He said they were properly fleed, wormed and vaccinated. Price said the congenital quadriceps issue wasn't his client's fault. He said it wouldn't have even been their decision to put Loki down, and added the condition was only suspected.
Clive Cottage Vet Clinic's Alistair Denton, whose practice examined the litter, gave his thoughts on the leg issues preceding Loki's death.
They looked fine. There's developmental issues that happen, and it's really hard without examining that dog when it was unwell. You know, what are the things that it could have been? Let's say you have the Demodex, it might have caused an infection that's cruised around, you know, that's gone into a polyarthritis, which is possible. The other thing the radiologist commented on was the possibility of trauma, which I think is unlikely, but it's just one of those things. But you know, I think Margaret, you know, she wanted the benefit of the doubt to have the puppy back and to give it a crack. Where there's life, there's hope, hey, and when you're only little. But again, really hard without seeing the animal and how bad it was.
Meanwhile, Stephen Price, again speaking on his client's behalf, says the cases of mange are unfortunate. He says it was reported by the owners of other pups from the same litter, but both of these puppies recovered and their owners had no complaints. He says the mange appears to be a congenital condition, invisible to Miss Hawke, James Roberts and Rachel Keith. Their vet, Alistair Denton, has some ideas as to possible causes, and says in hindsight his practice probably did observe the early signs of mange.
I treated a lot of Demodex. The fact that it's 2 or 3 in a litter that all got it suggests that it's an unlucky pairing of, you know, male and mum and dad who together had maybe a recessive gene that predisposed them to a problem. Okay, now could you know that ahead of time? You can do genetic tests now. I know a lot of breeders aren't doing it, but Margaret's asked if she can. Actually, I think she's asked to come in today to get this dog genetic tested. So I feel like from her point of view, she's doing what she can, and this has been a horrible experience for her as well.
Meanwhile, Stephen Price says Miss Hawke has taken Clive Cottage Vet's advice not to breed from Boss, the boxer pup's mother, again. On September 21, Mr Price told Checkpoint Boss would be genetically tested and the results provided to Checkpoint no matter what the outcome. So far, no results have arrived. In response to Checkpoint's questions about whether Miss Hawke should genetically test her dogs, Price says his clients are baffled by the question, asking what possible need there could be to do so. He also says Miss Hawke's vets were not suggesting it. However, Serena Dix, who runs the Boxers and Bullies Charitable Trust, has a different view.
There's no excuses for that not to be done these days. It's so cheap. It's not expensive anymore. I mean, if you've got a female and you get 4 litters out of her and she produces 10 puppies and you sell each litter of 10 puppies for $2,000 each, that bitch only has to have 1 lot of genetic testing done at $240. So there's absolutely no reason why that can't be done.
Potential genetic issues can be picked up in such tests.
As with all breeds, there's sort of predisposed conditions that they are more prone to. So with boxers, it's things like bad hearts, kidneys, hips, elbows, those sorts of things. And it would be very similar in the American Bulldog and a lot of other breeds, Rottweilers, Dobermans, German Shepherds. They're all sort of predisposed to the same sorts of things, which can all be tested for via DNA.
During this investigation, Checkpoint was warned by Mr Price not to visit Margaret Hawke's property. When we visited to film her paddocks from across the road, we were threatened by 2 aggressive men with spades who swore at us. Price has since supplied us with this video of that rural property Margaret Hawke uses for breeding. The footage shows large grass areas for the animals, and Price says there are numerous kennels on site. He also offered to allow a third party to visit and report back. In one of his many responses on Miss Hawke's behalf over several weeks, Mr Price says his client has sold hundreds of puppies to happy customers over the last decade. He gave the example of Charlotte Madden, a satisfied customer whose boxer puppy, also from the same litter as Loki and Cooper, is reportedly in excellent health. Alistair Denton says he can also vouch for the health of puppies he has seen from Margaret Harkimer over the last couple of years.
I would have seen 50 of her litters, and I'll be honest with you and say that, I've never found an issue with any of them.
As for her use of intermediaries, Margaret Harkimer offers a number of reasons for this. Stephen Price says his client is a private person who prefers not to deal with the public. She also doesn't have time to sell the puppies because she's busy breeding them. However, Stephen Price concedes Margaret Harkimer uses intermediaries as a way of sidestepping or skirting Trade Me's rules. These limit puppy sales to a maximum of 5 litters per year. And Checkpoint's investigation uncovered another reason why Margaret Harkimer uses intermediaries. Here's Alistair Denton again.
She had a parvo outbreak on she had an illness on her property, so she sent all these dogs away. She had all these friends looking after these litters, so she didn't have the hands-on these puppies that she would normally have had. Okay, and I do wonder whether, if she'd had these dogs, whether she would have sent them to Auckland.
Miss Harkimer, again through Stephen Price, says a parvovirus outbreak on her farm is another reason why the puppies are fostered and sold by intermediaries. Mr Price says despite his client's meticulous precautions, Miss Harkimer is described as obsessive about the disease. 4 puppies on her farm were found to have parvovirus in January this year. 2 of those puppies died. Mr Price says he can't go into detail about the outbreak for legal reasons, but stresses it's not Miss Harkimer's fault. Mr Price says he is willing to offer RNZ a confidential briefing instead. The parvovirus outbreak also helps explain another Waikato-based puppy purchaser's complaint. The buyer, who asked not to be named, purchased a Labradoodle from another of Miss Harkimer's intermediaries. Another Hawke's Bay couple, Abby Sherwood and Jacob Milden, in May this year.
And then when we received the puppy and we took it home, we sort of started to say, well, we should have got a vet book, and we hadn't received a vet book, and that was starting to be a bit of a cause for concern. So we inquired back to the people that we had purchased the dog off, and things started to get more and more fishy, I guess, for the fact that there was no vet book, no proof of vaccinations when they had sold the dog to us. And we were under the assumption that the dog had its first vaccination, which would need to be documented in a vet book to be able to take that to our vet.
Abby Sherwood did not respond to Checkpoint's questions, but Miss Harkimer, again speaking through her lawyer, Stephen Price, has been able to explain the missing vet book. When the parvovirus outbreak occurred, she started vaccinating her own puppies at her farm. This was confirmed by Abby Sherwood in a text to the Labradoodle's owner.
Mr Price says this started in April during level 4 lockdown and with the Labradoodle litter. He says this is an extra early vaccination to get the puppy's immune system up and running. However, Mr Price says because Margaret Harkimer is not a vet, she cannot supply a vet book. The New Zealand Veterinary Association says a registered vet must give authorisation for a breeder to vaccinate their own puppies and, ideally, see the puppies first. Mr Price has supplied Checkpoint with a letter from Dr Sharon Marshall, the owner of Vets 1 in Hastings, authorising Margaret Harkimer's self-vaccinations.
However, the letter appears to be written retrospectively, dated September 15, despite authorising vaccinations from April 1. Checkpoint wanted to know how authorisation was given back in April. Mr Price says this was verbal authorisation and Miss Harkimer can't remember if it was documented. Vets 1 declined to be interviewed. Checkpoint also wanted to know why there were puppies back on Miss Harkimer's property so quickly. The New Zealand Veterinary Association says only fully vaccinated dogs should be on a property for the 6 to 12 months following the discovery of parvovirus, which can significantly impact a breeder's ability to have litters. Mr Price was unable to offer an answer to this question. Meanwhile, Serena Dix from the Boxers and Bullies Charitable Trust says anyone with issues with any puppy they've purchased online should contact the SPCA.
If people do experience problems like this with no matter who the breeder is, you need to report it to the SPCA.
The SPCA executed a search warrant at Margaret Harkimer's Hastings property on August 28, but no animals were seized and no scrapings were taken. Mr Price says one SPCA vet found Boss, Cooper and Loki's mother, to be in excellent health, while another vet described Margaret's property as beautiful, with the only recommendation being to construct 2 more dog houses. But Checkpoint can reveal another search warrant was executed by the SPCA on the same day at an Auckland vet clinic, during which 2 other puppies from the same boxer litter as Loki and Cooper were seized. Mr Price says those puppies developed mange, but by early September were in excellent health and entirely healthy. The SPCA has declined to provide further details of its investigation into Margaret Harkimer, but last week it served Checkpoint with an order requesting documents relevant to its investigation. The order refers to suspected offences under the Animal Welfare Act. For Checkpoint, Nick Trubridge.